Good morning, everyone. Happy Canada Day weekend. Happy 4th of July weekend. And just a happy weekend overall. I'm feeling much, much better, as you guys can hear in my voice. My name is Omar, coming at you guys from West Coast, British Columbia, Canada, with my beautiful little cat Daisy that is in heat, and she is meowing all over the place. So you guys might hear a little odd meow here and there, but otherwise it's good for you anyways. It's 5 to 8 frequency, and we all love little cats and kitties. So the cat singing in the background for Kiara is the cheer group, I call it. So, guys, today's show, I've been looking forward to it. We're supposed to have this talk last week, but as you guys know, I wasn't feeling very well, and unfortunately, I had to cancel twice. I was hoping to feel better the next day, but unfortunately, I didn't. And my guest, my friend Kiara, understood that, and he's like, "All right, we'll hit it up next week if you're feeling up to it." And I absolutely am feeling up to it today. Wonderful show yesterday with Eric Hecker. So thank you very much, Eric. And if you guys missed that, go into my video archives and check out the titled show, WTF in Antarctica. What is going on down there? It was an incredible talk we did, and I appreciate that. And thank you to Dr. Joan as well from day before. We did the Looking Glass talk and just did a quick update. And today's talk is Issa, Jesus in India, the lost years of Jesus. Now, I had this conversation with Kiara and Paul Wallace about 2 weeks ago, and it was a wonderful conversation, and we left a lot open. So, just to do a recap, we discovered that Jesus had a twin, and Jesus traveled to India. He traveled up into Great Britain. He traveled possibly into the Americas, and definitely he was in Japan and the China region, as there are legends of Jesus being in that area, and especially after his so-called crucifixion, and he went and lived out the rest of his days in some say in Kashmir. There happens to be a grave in Kashmir that is pointed towards Issa, Jesus, may peace be upon him. And as well, there is a grave in Japan as well that says that Jesus lived there, and he had a wife and children, and he became a garlic farmer, and he lived to be a ripe old age of 106 years old. And I can roll with both, right? Because the aspect of Jesus, the man himself, he is multidimensional. He can be in many places at the same time. So it wouldn't really surprise me if he was in Kashmir and in Japan at the very same time. I'd like to have that ability to be in two places at the same time, so I can then I'm able to get some things done. Mark Kingsley, welcome, and Spirit Talk with Lizzie, welcome, my sister. Thank you very much for being here. Please give this video a like and give it a share, and let's raise some awareness on this subject. And hello to our brother, Full Spectrum Universe, Rob Yox. Check out his channel. It's a beautiful channel. He's done lots of great work on there, and he's doing a Tartarian series right now with Dr. Jones. So that is quite interesting. I have a little bit of interest in that, and I've been learning a lot from those guys. So thank you for doing that, guys, and check it out. So my guest today, Kiara Windrider, he is based out of India, and we're going to be doing actually a lot of talks in the coming weeks with Kiara, and I have Bibu Dev Misra coming on next week, and we'll be talking about the same thing, like ancient India and Jesus being in India, because I'm trying to understand this subject, and I'd like to raise my awareness on it as much as I possibly can. And my friend Kiara has just written a book and is actually writing a series of books which are not yet published, but we will be getting them published here pretty soon. And I've had the opportunity to read that book, and I read it right through. It's like one of those books. What example can I use? The Chariots of the Gods. I came across that book and I couldn't put it down. I read it all the way through. And then 1984, George Orwell, same thing. I read it all the way through. Just amazing books, and Kiara has written a beautiful book, and I hope that you guys can get a chance to read that in the near future. So let's bring Kiara on and him, and then we will pick it up from kind of where we left off last time. And as well, guys, this show is brought to you by Ancient Healings Conference, which is happening on July 8th, 9th, and the 10th. You can check out more information at ancienthealingsconference.com. This is going to be an in-person event in Florida as well as a virtual. And I will be speaking at the virtual event, and I'll be talking about sound healing and how to keep a optimal distortion within yourself. Because you guys know I'm practical, right? So I'm down with sound healing and all, but not everybody owns a gong, and not everybody owns a flute. Not everyone owns musical instruments, nor not everyone is up to playing these instruments. So we are the instrument, is what my message is. And then when we're humming and when we're whistling, that is creating sound vibration, and that sound vibration can help heal our body avatar. All right, so enough of that. Check out ancienthealingsconference.com. I will share the link in the comments very soon. Welcome, Kira. Windrider, my brother. Thank you very much for being here. 9 p.m. your time in India, 8:30 a.m. here in Canada, 12 and a half hour difference. I appreciate you, my friend. I appreciate your wisdom, your knowledge in this subject. You have a vast array of knowledge and a full spectrum of information, but this is like one piece of the spectrum which we're dissecting and trying to understand and learn, because we know from the scripture, the Holy Scripture that the Catholic Church has put out, it's a wonderful piece of literature if you're into it. I have a friend of mine, Michael Feely, who has decoded the Bible, but his decodation of the Bible is a little bit different. It's very esoteric. Instead of when he talks about the Jacob's ladder, he's interpreted as the spine, right? And lots like that, like the characters within the biblical story are part of the human body avatar and consciousness, and he's speaking at it from that level, which I appreciate as well, right? And then there's the other aspect of the Holy Scriptures from the Old Testament and the New Testament, and the stories that it gives are very interesting. But the main character, he's missing for like 21, 22 years. And this is where you're coming in, and other researchers have stepped in and have done their diligence in doing the research and studying the ancient literature that has been left behind to indicate that Jesus, may peace be upon him, was in India, and he lived in India for quite some time, and he learned the theological philosophies from monasteries as he was traveling. And along his path, he came across Mary, and Mary was his teacher for a while, and then they reversed the roles, and that's kind of where we have left off. And this story is actually very, very deep, guys. As I was mentioning earlier, Kiara has just written a book called "The Son of the Sun," Issa, and it's a very deep book. And in the book, he's talking about the tribes of Israel, the 12 tribes, and and that's kind of where I think we will start our talk today, because I think that's a very important piece of information there to understand. And from what I read and from what I understand, these tribes that were in Israel, with war and conquest and what have you, as you guys understand, people were being deported and just kicked out of the country, out of the land, and they had to go back to other places and kind of what have you. And kind of the story just continues to revolve from there. They come back, they go back, they come back, they go back. So I think that'd be a really, really good spot, Kiara, to really begin our understanding of Jesus, and and then his how he was influenced by the Assyrians and the Carthaginians, and then he went to Persia, and he spent a little bit time in Persia, and then after that into India. But I don't want to give it away, because I'm so excited about this, because I can just keep on going, because I just simply love the subject. I adore the subject, actually, because I love Jesus myself, right? He's Christ consciousness. I was used to be ignorant when I was younger, and I used to look at these religious figures as just simply that, as religious figures. And because of my anger towards my upbringing and being forced to conduct myself into a religion, I became anti-religion to pretty much everything. And I badmouthed Jesus on many, many occasions, and Muhammad and kind of what have you. But I feel bad for that now, because as my awareness is rising and my ignorance is being lifted, I'm beginning to learn things, and that it's really opening up my eyes. And because it's opening up my eyes, I'm feeling shame within, because of the bad mouthing I did, and calling names and kind of what have you, by not fully understanding the scope of things. But now that I'm understanding, right, I am I feel a little shame inside, so I apologize to Jesus on numerous occasions, like, I'm sorry, brother, I didn't mean to say that to you.
Mm.
Things like that, right? And it's over the years I've learned, but over the course of like last several weeks, like, you've really raised my awareness on this, because I got a little bit of a deeper understanding and the background as to what Jesus is, and what he stands for, and what happened to him, after his crucifixion. And so yeah, let's start there, my man. And then
Wow.
as questions come up, I'll hit you with
Mm.
the questions. And guys, if you have any questions for Kiara or myself, please feel free to toss them into the comments. I'll highlight them, and I will address those to Kiara as they come up. But I'll wait until he pauses, because I don't want to be rude and interrupt, because I know once a person gets into the flow, then once you break that flow, it really doesn't come back.
Mm.
So my brother, go ahead, and ask questions.
Great.
I'll hit him up.
Mm. Well, that's quite an introduction, Omar. Thank you. And this is for all of us, for me and Omar, and I'm sure for anyone who's ever been searching for the truth. Um, this is not just something that's outside of you. It's something that um, impels you from the inside. And for myself, I had an experience when I was 15. When I was out hiking in the wilderness, I fell off a waterfalls. I, must have fallen about a couple of 100 feet
Oh wow,
and survived.
yeah.
And that
Damn.
opened up a whole new exploration. It's like the questions of life. Why am I here? Why am I still here? Um, and what am I here for? Is there something deeper, greater, more to be accomplished?
Is that
And
like an NDE experience that you had,
yeah, yeah.
or something close to
Well, it
it?
was a physical experience of survival.
Hmm.
And during that time, there was a sense that my entire life was flashing before my eyes. And, seeing things in a way that I hadn't seen before. Just those few seconds that I was falling and realizing that there's nothing I could do to save myself anymore. So after that initial moment of panic and
Hmm.
franticness, I relaxed completely, and there was a sense of absolute peace, of absolute knowing that there's no death. And then things started coming together in new ways. I won't go into the whole story of what happened there, but what it um, revealed for me later was a deeper awareness of what it means to be human, what it means to be divine, and reconcile both in the same um, life experience.
Hmm.
And so at that point, I started, reading and researching, traveling, and looking for life's meaning. I spent time in many different ashrams in India. This all happened in India. I grew up in South India, and so I was exploring many different traditions, traveling to different ashrams, um, meditating and learning how to meditate, and really going as deeply into that as I possibly could. And during that phase, I examined many different paths, including Christianity. I remember going to a priest. I found this priest once, and I asked him, I'm very curious about this man named Jesus, and and he said all these things about the same things I do, shall you do. He taught about healing. He told his disciples to go out and heal the sick and raise the dead. And I said to him, this sounds fascinating. I'd like to learn all this. And he said, and he laughed, in a very kindly way. And he said, son, the age of miracles is over. And I couldn't accept that. It's like, to me, this wasn't the Jesus that I'd come to want to experience. And I'd been reading books about people like Yogananda, Paramahamsa, Autobiography of a Yogi, and many others, of all these incredible masters living in the Himalayas, in their caves, in the mountaintops, and traveling and teaching. Um, so this wasn't something that was simply one man that had this special um, experience of being the Son of God or having this special dispensation. It was
Mm-hmm.
something that in that culture at that time was commonplace. So that was a starting point for me. So to me, learning about Isa, as he's known in India, was about recognizing that this is a tradition. It's not just one man, it's a teaching that's an inner as well as outer teaching. And it's a path of apprenticeship and discipleship that we are all called to follow. So when Jesus talks about follow me, it's not follow me as a person, it's follow this lineage, it's follow the inner self, it's follow the spirit that moves through all things,
Mm-hmm. It's like
define.
a way of life, eh,
It's a
Kiara?
way of life, and it's a way of diving into our true um, awareness of
Mm-hmm.
who, which we have forgotten. Most of us in the present age have basically forgotten who we are. We've been conditioned to think of ourselves as this tiny little um, creature, this piece of dust floating in the wind. Whereas in truth, we are a holographic mirror of all creation. That's what God is to me
Mm-hmm.
now. And so in my early life, it was about recognizing this divinity in the heart of all things, all religions, all traditions, um, through different shamanic traditions, meditation practices. Um, so where does Isa come into this? So at first, I was interested in the Hindu teachings, the yogic philosophies, the recognition that I am not separate from God, that
Mm-hmm.
I am that, and that is all things, that is in all things.
You're the
And
creation and the creator at the same time.
exactly, yes, and the distinction is simply a distinction we create in the mind, but that distinction, as it embodies itself in our physical form, we are a multi-dimensional um, being.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so the Hindus talk about the five sheets or the five koshas. So there's this physical form is just one of many, and then so this is known as the food body. Interestingly, then there's the prana body, which is basically life energy. There's the mental body. There's the emotional body. There's the causal body, which is the realm of the soul. And so there was this whole teaching at that time of how this causal body, what they referred to as the Anandamaya Kosha, the
Mm-hmm.
body of bliss, could interpenetrate the four lower bodies. And then once that penetration became total, then your thoughts, your intentions, your um, decisions instantly manifested. And and we can speak about how this actually became part of the Essene teachings. They became part of what Jesus was teaching his disciples. Of course, at that time, there was no context for it in the Hebrew tradition because the Hebrew tradition was much more dualistic. Uh, so God was transcendent, God was separate, God was
Mm-hmm.
above, and humans were basically, separate. We were lesser. We were defined as sinners, um, and therefore, limited and had to go through this whole mediation in order to even begin to glimpse the possibilities of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So, to understand Jesus in this context is to recognize that much of his training actually took place in these ancient traditions, what we now call Advaita, non
Mm-hmm.
duality, in India and China and Tibet and Egypt and Persia, but primarily in India. Um, and as I began to explore this, and much of this exploration only began once I went to the United States. I was doing a bachelor's in peace studies and environmental studies. Then I did a master's in transpersonal psychology, which is about bringing together mind, body, and spirit. In the tradition of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, in the tradition of the Buddhist traditions, the Advaita traditions, many of the Eastern traditions, while also at the same time holding the power of the psyche that was taught by people like Carl Jung, Robert Assagioli, Stan Grof, through direct experience of the body. So this was my journey. And as part of that, I began to look at Jesus or Issa from a different perspective now.
Mm-hmm.
So now he is no longer someone that I wanted to study as a teacher or as a savior or as someone who was a historical figure in the past, but someone who now had a vision that was possible to penetrate. So I began to approach him as a disciple. So that story of when I first went to that priest and he said, "The age of miracles is over." And I began to recognize the age of miracles has never been over. It is simply about understanding and perceiving things differently. Our
Mm-hmm.
perceptions shape reality, our beliefs shape reality. And as we begin to recognize the truth of who we are, reality changes. And that's what Jesus was trying to teach. So I began to explore all these um, writings from ancient traditions. The first book I read was actually a channeled book. It was a book by um, Elizabeth Cooper. Not what's the name? Elizabeth. Uh, I have it here. Let
I'm
me find.
I'm not sure. Elizabeth Hurley comes to mind, but
Elizabeth Prophet. Um, so yeah, so this was a channeled writing, but it included um, a book that became popular in the early part of the last century, based on the travels of this Russian traveler,
hmm
uh, Nikolai. Oh my God, what's going on with my brain? I can't remember things right now. Um,
let me see if I can
the
pull it up.
unknown life of Jesus the Christ, and so he apparently was traveling through Ladakh. He fell off his horse, and this was about 100 years ago. The lamas, the Tibetan lamas, found him. They took him to their monastery in Hemis, which I happened to have the opportunity to visit in September last year. And so this is one of those ancient libraries, similar to Alexandria, which houses many different records from many different traditions. And so when they realized who he was part of the Russian Orthodox Church. They brought him their own scriptures about the life of Jesus, which was completely different from anything that he had encountered from the Christian church of his time.
Mm-hmm.
We can get into that a little bit. And so this filled in some of the missing years from the Western Christian tradition. So, when they say in the Bible, in the New Testament, that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, his parents then took him into Egypt. Perhaps he lived among the Essenes, later came back to Jerusalem, engaged the priests in dialogue and um, profound arguments when he was around 12. And then after that, nothing is heard of him. He disappears and reappears when he's around the age of 30 to begin his um, Palestinian mission. So, what happened during those 18 years in between? So, some of those years are filled out through these Tibetan and ancient Hindu writings. Um, Later, after he returned to India, um, after the crucifixion, which is another whole story, um, many of his followers, including Thomas, established the first churches in on the Malabar coast of India, the west coast of India. So this was the spice trade going on between Kerala and the Arab countries. And this was a colony of Jews, much like Kashmir was a colony of Jews. So I think where we stopped last time, Omar, was the discussion about who were these Jews that settled in Kashmir and Afghanistan, Baluchistan. They were actually those known as the lost tribes, the Bani Israel. So back in about 1500 BC, there are all these wars happening between the different tribes, between the 12 tribes of Israel. And two of the tribes that had settled south of the River Jordan um, went into some kind of a military contract with the Assyrians to overcome the 10 tribes north of the Jordan and basically relocated them east. So around 1500 BC, they started to settle in that region that is now known as Afghanistan, Balochistan, and Kashmir.
Mm-hmm.
They then interbred with tribes that had come down south from the Caucasus mountains in the Russian regions. So these were the tribes known as the Tocharians, the Sakyas, the Munis, the Pishachas, and others.
The
Uh,
Tartarian is quite interesting. I find. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because
yeah, the
is
Tatarians
Jesus
were fair
was
skinned.
Issa a Tartarian himself?
Sorry, the
Was Issa Tartarian himself,
no,
or was he part of
not
the different?
Tatarian, Tocharian. So that's completely different.
Okay.
Uh, the Tocharians were um, they were like most of the Caucasian tribes.
Mm-hmm.
They were blonde, blue-haired, tall, um, are basically what we today would call Aryan
Mm-hmm.
in in their features, and they interbred with these 10 tribes, but they retain their Jewish origins.
Mm-hmm.
In those days, Judaism was matriarchal or matrilinear,
Mm-hmm.
which means that as long as your mother is Jewish, you're considered Jewish. And so, um, even though the Jews at that time were a mixture of many different tribal origins, they were all considered Jewish and all equal. Many of the tribes then later became, so this would be around 500 BC, became the um, origins for the Buddhist lineage. So Buddha, or Siddhartha as he was known in his early days, was a prince in the Sakya and the Muni lineages. That's why he's sometimes known as Sakya Muni. And there was a prophecy at that time, after he died, that 500 years after the death of the Buddha, the Maitreya was a title,
Mm-hmm.
or Meteya in Pali, he would return. Um, and there was this tradition that the next Meteya would be one who would gather these tribes together. So the reunification of the 12 tribes of
Mm-hmm.
Israel. And later that extended out to more than the Jewish tribes. But because Kashmir at that time was basically a Jewish colony, it started with a prophecy of the reunification of the 12 tribes of Israel. So, in response, okay, so now we come to that lineage to
Mm-hmm.
which Isa belonged. His parents, his father was actually the ruler of the kingdom of Kash. Kash is what the word Kashmir comes from. And Kash was this valley um, in the midst of the mountains where Srinagar is currently located. So, banks of the Dal Lake, which is beautiful, and I was there in September last year. And part of the reason I was there was to follow the footsteps of the story,
Mm-hmm.
Isa, the people that were involved with him. So his father was the ruler of the kingdom of Kutch. Um, his mother was, of course, the queen, co-ruler, but she was also um, the daughter of a ruler in the region further west, known as, I forget the name, but that included the kingdom of Takshila. And the, some of you may have heard the name Gondopharis.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, she was there was a relationship there, and of course, being all related to each other through tribal connections, all these tribes were connected. All these rulerships were connected through intermarriage and lineage. Um, so so they were rulers. They had heard of this prophecy. They were told that their son would be the one who was to come to reunite these tribes.
Mm-hmm.
Next Meteya. So that's what happened then at that point, before Jesus actually, when after he was conceived, his parents um, made the journey over to Palestine in order to prepare for the next part of
Mm-hmm.
the fulfillment of this prophecy.
Now,
And in those days, this was fairly common um, on camels and horses and sometimes on foot through
mm-hmm.
the passes. And it usually takes about 3 or 4 months to make that entire journey. So going through um, Kashmir in what is now Pakistan, Afghanistan, and then through parts of Persia, Babylon, into Egypt, and then Palestine.
You think Jesus back in those days, he would have traveled through the Harpon Empire?
Harappan,
Yeah,
Mohenjo-daro, Harappa.
yeah,
Yeah,
he would have traveled through Mohenjo-daro back when
absolutely.
Mohenjo-daro was in
And
its prime, right?
exactly. And trade back then was quite the thing. All the rulers at that time were also traders.
Mm-hmm.
So Jesus's father, um, we know him in the Western tradition as Joseph. Um, in that tradition, he was known as Meghavahana, and there's historical records of him
Mm-hmm.
in the annals of Kashmir. And he was a trader in tin. He would often, even before the birth of Jesus, Isa, he would go off traveling westwards up into um, Albion or England, as it's known today, as a trader in tin
Hmm.
and making alliances along the way.
A lot of
Uh,
tin up in Great Britain as well, right? That's why the Romans were so interested in that territory because of the tin.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. That was a huge source of
Hmm.
income for the Romans, and then all the way along the Silk Road.
Yeah, and he would have been quite well off too, right? Because transporting tin like that to the Roman Empire, then he must have had some clout and a little bit of how can I say it, like influence of like Elon Musk would have
Mm,
today, or you know what I mean? It
absolutely.
would have like that type of an influence within the governing body of the Roman Empire.
Sure, and we'll understand what this means later because, well, just a hint,
Hmm.
Pontius Pilate was actually a disciple of of Joseph, and by extension also Issa. So, as a Roman governor, there were political ties between um, Megavahana, or Joseph, as
Hmm.
he's known in the West, as a ruler of Kush. So he was connected to the Roman Empire as a trader, as a political figure,
They would have
and had
respected
influence.
him as such too, right? As a king of a nation, and then here he is in their empire, and so they would give that respect to him as the ruling leader.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, think of him today as a carpenter's son,
Hmm.
uh, poor and simple. He wasn't, yes, he was simple in the sense that, he was rugged, he was self sufficient, he was a traveler, he, didn't pander to luxury and the need for, people to be subservient. But
Hmm.
he wasn't poor. In fact, when the so-called wise men came, bearing their gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh, there was enough gold. It wasn't like a coin or two. There was enough gold to last them the rest of their lives because they recognized that there was a destiny that needed to be fulfilled.
Hmm. I
Mm.
was telling my wife that very thing yesterday. We were having a conversation on this, and
Mm.
I was telling her about the wise men coming and giving them enough gold to last a lifetime. And my wife was like, "Holy shit, that's a lot of gold." I was like, "Yeah, it's not like he was poor, right? The guy was pretty well off, but that wasn't his priority though in life, right?"
No, and that goal also sustained the Essene communities
Mm-hmm.
in Alexandria and Qumran and others. So, so it was used for much more than their own personal family.
Mm-hmm.
It was basically about, um, you know, fulfilling the destiny of bringing the tribes together. Interestingly, the Essenes, and many of you are probably familiar with the Essenes, as a healing sect who lived very simply.
Mm-hmm.
They were Buddhists. They had um, been sent by the Emperor Ashoka, who also sent emissaries to Japan and China and Thailand and elsewhere to take Buddhism, the, the essence of the Buddhist tradition, which included healing and included the idea of traveling two by two
Mm-hmm.
to carry the, these traditions. Um, so the mendicant tradition of India and the gypsy tradition that then came with the Indians into Romania and then into much of the West at a later
Mm-hmm.
point. This was a tradition that the
I
Buddhist.
didn't know gypsies came from the Far East. I always thought that they were from Romania, but how interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they came from India.
Yeah,
In,
that's very cool.
yeah, so the Romani people. So I mean, history is fascinating. We can go into so many different um, intersections with all this, and what's fascinating is to look at how history and spirituality um, feed off each other. So, and why does so much of history get forgotten or changed when certain powers come into power? What happened when the Roman Catholic Church came into power? Why did history go through so many significant changes? Why did so many books from the Bible get eradicated? Why did so many writings and manuscripts that had been uh, written and collected in the East get completely ignored?
That was what
So,
in 350 AD, the Council of Nicaea.
mhm.
Is that when it was? Well, 350 AD when they decided to add and remove books from the Holy Scripture, like the Book of Ezekiel, the Book of Enoch, things like that. They removed. That was it, right? The Council of Nicaea in 350.
Yeah, I don't know exactly when, but they also eradicated and edited a lot of the existing books. So
Hmm.
the concepts such as reincarnation, they'd been quite um, normal at that time because they were very normal in India as well, in the
Hmm.
East. And those concepts came in with uh, Issa and his teachings and his disciples. They got eradicated. They still remain. Um, like this talk about who do you think I am, um, as he asks his disciples, and then talks about being a reincarnation of earlier prophets like
Hmm.
maybe Enoch or Ezekiel or Isaiah, whoever,
Moses.
Moses. So, yes. So in those days, this was a common understanding
Hmm.
of how the soul evolves itself through different lifetimes. The law of karma is basically as you reap, so you sow, or as you sow, so you reap. Um, and
Is there
you know,
such thing as like good karma and bad karma, or is it just simply karma, right? Because karma just means action, right? You're committing yourself to a particular action.
yeah. So, well, in the Hindu tradition of that time, and even today, karma is the word for action. The
Hmm.
karma yoga is liberation through service. Um, so, bad karma is, the law of um, karma when you refuse to learn from goodness,
Hmm.
and basically you need to learn about abuse of power or manipulation in order to feel good about yourself.
Is this
And
where
gradually,
the cycle of incarnation comes in? Because
in-
I know people want to break that cycle of incarnation, right? So I wonder if karma has something to do with that, where you can, where you've brought karma from your previous life into this incarnation, and if you learn from that, then your incarnation cycle can be broken so that you can reconnect with the source and not come back.
that's a very simplistic way of phrasing it. I would
Hmm.
say further, yes, it's true. And um, the recognition that I am that, so,
Hmm.
or I am that I am, here and now. So many interpretations of this say, oh, yeah, once you uh, move past the cycle of karma, you're free, and freedom means freedom from the cycle of incarnation.
Hmm.
Um, and to a certain extent, if that's what you want, fine. But we also need to remember that part of our journey into this dimension is to transform this dimension. It's not to escape this dimension into some other verified dimension in whatever we want to call that.
Hmm.
But we're here to bring divinity into our humanity. We're here to bring spirit
I
into the
see.
heart of matter. We're here to transform this by fully linking the different bodies together. So remember, we talked about the five bodies.
Hmm.
Um, so the Anandamaya Kosha is where we experience a connection with the divine as the self. And then, as that uh, self awareness penetrates through these lower bodies into the physical body, into our understanding of reality, into our heart and emotional self, that then begins to um, penetrate into the heart of matter in also, structures and systems around us.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, into the political, economic structures, into educational and um, scientific discoveries. We are here to experience ourselves as God, as infinite creators, um, or God in evolution. So God is not a static principle. It evolves through us.
Mm-hmm. As we
That's
evolve ourselves.
we
Uh,
evolve ourselves as God, and this is what Jesus, Issa, had come to teach, amongst other things.
mm-hmm.
And so when he says, "I and the Father are one," um, and what is the thing? The same things that I do, you shall do also. Because we're talking about miracles, we're talking about expanding our understanding of science to
Mm-hmm.
include what we would previously call miracles. Miracles are nothing but a deeper understanding of spiritual science.
Mm-hmm.
So once we understand the nature of reality, we can influence reality, we can shape reality, and we become an agent for something bigger than ourselves to move into this
Mm-hmm.
dimension.
That's
To
kind of when people say that your thoughts can manifest themselves. That's kind of
Mm,
where you're heading with this, right? Is where where you can mold reality into what you want it to be. We could talk in 21st century terms to where you can program the matrix in front of you for it to serve you to do what you want it to do. That's kind
mm.
of what you're alluding to here, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I love that metaphor of the Matrix. That movie. It's like we're,
Documentary.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We are literally stuck in the Matrix, and the idea. And what? Okay, so let's talk about what is the Matrix, because this has bearing on this larger theme.
Hmm.
Matrix is the idea that um, we're limited, we're separate, and we're controlled by something outside of us.
Hmm.
Now, when that changes, so what's the red pill? The red pill, taking that red pill is a recognition that the universe exists inside me. It's not outside of me. I am the universe, holographically connected to all things. Um, and that the one spirit that moves through all things also flows through me, flows through my thoughts. So when I refer to me, then it's no longer referring to this separate human identity, but it's also referring to this great spirit that moves through all things and is descending into this mind body um, mechanism in order to create through.
I call
Uh,
it body computer avatar.
there you
Right.
go.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
that's what I've called it for forever now, because that's kind of what it seems to be, right? It's a computer. It is an avatar,
And,
and it is a body as well that can be programmed to do, whatever it is that you wanted to do, right? As we were
and
speaking earlier. Right now, understanding the matrix here, right? Is the known universe that we live in, this bubble universe, is that what the matrix is, or is the matrix like independent individual planets, like the earth would be a matrix within the universe, and
mm,
then so on and so on? Or is it that the entire universe is a matrix, and within that matrix you have certain options to experience certain realities, right? Like you can be in this galaxy and experience something here. You can go to Andromeda and so on and so on.
mm, mm, mm. Yeah, that's a great question. So let's look at this from the perspective of Kashmir Shaivism,
Hmm.
which is, I believe, this is the source of much of Issa's teachings. Um, so what they say is that everything that you see outside of you is also inside of you,
Hmm.
because our senses are multidimensional. Um, if we are cut off from the higher senses, we only perceive reality from the five gross senses. And that's a very limited version of reality. Once we begin to explore the subtle senses and perceive the linkages between all these. Then we start to become multidimensional in the sense that we see we see the entire universe inside us. Every single cell of our physical body becomes an entire universe.
I like that.
So, in a sense, then the matrix is the idea that I'm separate, that I'm who I am is something that's limited, that
Hmm.
that's somehow um, less than divine,
Yeah, like inferior. Uh,
inferior.
yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying. But we're not though. We
So,
are.
hierarchy
Yeah,
is the matrix.
we are
Um,
divine, right? That
yeah,
can't be taken away from us, right? It's like taking away
exactly.
godhood from God. You just simply can't do that because we're an
Mm,
aspect of that divinity.
yeah. So God is here now,
Yeah,
and
I never
all
understood that, Kira, until just very recently. Because growing up, I was raised in an Islamic household. So while growing up, I always heard God is everywhere. God is in every breath. God knows, He knows exactly how many hairs you have on your head. I remember hearing stories like that growing up. And then now I understand, exactly what that is. And you just mentioned it, and I appreciate that because that was lost in translation to me for a very long time. As I've mentioned earlier, I had a hate on for God and, kind of
mm,
what have you. But as my ignorance lifts, I understand more. And what you just said is beautiful.
mm. Yeah, and even science today is catching up with this. So I've been fascinated by this new theory of science known as the electric universe theory, or it's also known as plasma cosmology. And basically, what they say is it's referring to the holographic nature of the universe.
Hmm.
So, like in the Buddhist Mahayana tradition, there's this metaphor of Indra's net. So, the Indra's net is like a string of pearls spread across the universe in such a way that every pearl reflects every other pearl
Hmm.
and contains every other pearl. And with
Interestingly enough, Indra's weapon is electrical as well, right? The
exactly
what is that
that.
called? The Dijadra, or um, I forgot what it's called now. It's got like two ends, right? Kind of like two bells on each end. Um, I'll find the name for it. It's Indra's weapon is what I know it as.
Oh, okay. Mm.
Let me
So
try to
these,
find it.
yeah, um, the different what do they call shastras? Yeah, yeah. So in the electric universe theory, it's very similar. What they say is that everything instantaneously connects with everything else across the universe. So um, there is a system of communication where every single atom, no matter how far apart in physical space or time, is linked together instantaneously. So you can think something here in this corner of this planet, and instantly across the galaxies, there's an effect.
Yeah, what is
Um,
that called?
but
Quantum entanglement, I
quantum
think.
entanglement, yeah. So now
Yeah.
science is talking about this in a context of quantum reality. And what we're realizing is it's not just quantum in the sense that it's subatomic. It's quantum in the sense that this is basic to our inmost being, that everything is connected literally to everything else. And once we understand that, not through this level of the mind, but through these levels of the mind beyond, once we really truly understand that, then these creative forces can work through our, what did you call it? The something avatar, the
A body computer avatar.
computer avatar. So this body computer avatar then becomes a means for the Great Spirit, for the divine, for God to become a channel for. Um, this in the Sufi tradition, they talk about this how there's phases where at first you identify yourself as a drop, a single drop of water, and you become a seeker. You're looking for enlightenment, you're looking for ultimate reality, you eventually uh, dissolve into the great ocean and you find yourself at one with the universe. You're free. But that's
That's
not the end of it.
I
Um,
I I call
stop,
that one becomes the whole, and the whole becomes the one, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I like
So the
that.
whole becoming the one is when the ocean enters the drop.
Mm-hmm.
That's you experience yourself as that. So when Jesus said, "I and the Father are one," I am that. Um, there's a profound meaning in that. And we say, okay, in the Christian tradition, he was the only Son of God. He was the only one who was capable of experiencing or manifesting that. No, um, his earlier um, explorations led him to the understanding that this is something we're all inherently capable of. It's
Mm-hmm.
within us. It's within all of us. Um, no one of us is special in the sense that we're different or unique. We're all unique in the sense that we're all capable of becoming a manifestation for the one spirit. That's the Vajra. Is that what you're thinking?
That's the one that I was thinking about, the Vajra Indra's weapon, and from what I understand, it had like electrical properties to it and can shoot like lightning bolts and things like that. Now, I don't know if that's just sci-fi from 21st century, but what I understand of ancient India, that
Mhm.
they indeed did have these types of weapons.
Yeah.
And so yeah, this is what I was thinking of about the
No, no,
Vajra.
absolutely. You're right. The Mahabharata um, is the story of all these ancient wars, um, but they were not weapons like
Like
we
we
can think
think of
of.
them, yeah, yeah.
We think of tanks and bazookas that are, you know, out there, and anyone who is trained can go fire them. No, these weapons were um,
Smart
internal.
weapons.
So you developed the power to harness the powers of the universe. And then these weapons were like an extension of that power.
I see, I see. It's kind of like a bullet is the extension of your fist.
Mhm.
Right? That's
Well, it's like you look at
that
these.
does make sense, Kira, where you would have to develop your inner abilities, your inner sense, and then have it projected through a certain object, right?
Mm,
That does make sense. Like Thor's hammer, for instance, right? He would have
yeah.
had to have learned that and then developed that in order for him to do what he needed to do with it. That just
Mhm.
makes a whole lot more sense. It cleared up a lot of things in my mind about that, actually. Thank you.
Well, look at all these movies that are coming out about the X-Men and the Avengers and all that. I
Yeah.
mean, guys are exhibiting these amazing powers, um, and we're learning that this is not something that is outside of us. Many kids are becoming aware of these powers within them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Same thing with the hot Harry Potter series, the Lord of the Rings, and it's like you recognize that um, these gifts are part of what we came in with.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we reconnect? So, in the early days, in the times of Issa, the teachings of the five bodies, for instance, were very much a part of that tradition. So, Issa's own teacher, Chaitanath, who he met in the time that he was traveling through India in his monkhood years. So he studied in India. He went through some of the universities and the monasteries. And then on his way back to Srinagar, he met his teacher. His name was Chetan Nath. He was one of the Nath yogis. This was a lineage of immortals. Um,
Are those
And
Manus?
no, Manus were an earlier
Okay,
uh,
okay.
tribe. The Manus were like they were the initiators of the human race.
Mm-hmm.
So they were the ones who who did all kind of genetic experimentations. It could be related to Enlil and Enki and
Mm-hmm.
Anunnaki or other galactic races.
Aren't they like part of like the root races as well, where they brought in this Aryan root race that we are currently in?
Yeah, could be. I mean, we're according to anthroposophy, we're now in the seventh root race.
Yeah, yeah.
This is like the divine human. We haven't achieved that yet. We're in the transition,
I
and
think
we.
Philip Lindsay is going to be talking about that during our Ancient India event
Mm,
coming up.
mm,
So
yeah,
he's
yeah.
incredible with theosophy, that man.
Oh, great, great. Yeah. So when we talk about the yugas, we're also dealing with these ages.
Mm-hmm.
We're transitioning now from the Kali Yuga to the Dwapara Yuga. Kali Yuga is inertia, matter,
Mm-hmm.
density. Dwapara Yuga is the yuga that represents the use of energy, how we use energy, how we recognize ourselves as channels for larger forces, um, even extending to you know nuclear energy and free energy technologies and so on. So
Mm-hmm.
starting with um, internal combustion to um, various other technologies that Tesla was here to introduce, and now we're going even beyond that to the use of spiritual technologies. So we are entering that age of energy. Then beyond that, there's Treta Yuga, and then the Satyuga. Satyuga is a time when those technologies are all inside. We don't need external technologies. We are um, harnessing the power of divinity, the Anandamaya Kosha, all the way through the physical forms or the physical bodies in such a way that there's a seamlessness. Uh, the moment you think something, you manifest it. There's no gap.
Mm-hmm.
So healing. So what Jesus was teaching his disciples was, yeah, how you can actually um, bridge all these different bodies so that the Ananda Maya Kosha, which is the body of bliss, which is your soul presence, could instantly manifest through your physical form to create ripples of healing. And this could happen instantaneously because time is not a factor here. When
Mm-hmm.
you go to these higher dimensional places, time is not linear. It's more of a hologram. So yes, all these things, all these mysteries, and all these secrets, were part of the the training of Issa at that time from his lineage of the Nath yogis. So
Mm-hmm.
there's Goraknath, and I can't remember all the names. Um, and Chetannath was his immediate teacher. And he plays a huge part in this story as well, um, which we could go into. In my book, I spend a lot of time exploring this connection between Isa and Chetannath and how that shaped his life and
That's
teachings.
in the Son of the Sun,
Yeah.
one that
Mhm.
you've currently wrote and
Mhm.
published soon.
Right.
Um, one of the main teachings of Jesus, Issa, was the Holy Trinity. Right now, what I'm seeing is a lot of like Vedic influence
Mm.
within Christianity. Now, I'd like to understand, like how the Vedic teaching of the Holy Trinity that Jesus was teaching, like how does that work, right? Like
Mm.
I'd like to understand that from Indian perspective instead of from the Catholic perception, as they
Yeah.
put it.
So in the Catholic tradition, I mean, this they're very much dealing with the outside world. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you talk about the Trinity, you're talking about three separate beings or
Mm-hmm.
aspects. Whereas in the Hindu tradition, they're all interpenetrating. They're aspects of each other. So, one way of expressing this is the Trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva.
Mm-hmm.
So, Brahma being the creator, Vishnu being the preserver, Shiva being the destroyer, but destroyer and recreator as well. And these are principles that are present in everything
Mm-hmm.
in our lives as we age. The biology is different, our thoughts change,
Mm-hmm.
abilities start to change. So we are simultaneously all three of them, and all of us are all three. So this trinity in the Hindu tradition is not based on, it's not based on gender.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on trying to, put one plus one plus one together,
Mm-hmm.
but recognizing that there's a unity within diversity, within trinities, that is constantly present, which shapes our lives as creators.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are experiencing yourself as a creator at the same time as experiencing yourself within creation, it's because we have internalized this trinity inside ourselves. So in Kashmir Shaivism, this whole principle was extended into what's known today as the tattvas. So these are like 36 different, not just three,
Mm-hmm.
uh, three aspects of divinity which are internalized within each one of us, or which can be internalized within each one of us,
Oh wow,
which
I'd like to learn about that.
go from, you know, transcendent reality beyond the beyond time, space, and creation, into physical time, space, matter. So, recognizing that each of these is an aspect of divinity, no more, no less. It's not a hierarchical system,
Mm-hmm.
realizing that everything exists within everything. And so, this one tiny little, you know, cell at the tip of my finger contains an entire universe.
Mm-hmm.
And this is God. So of course you change your definition of God. So God is no longer some old man sitting in a chair up in
Chronos.
the cloud. And, that's Zeus basically.
Yeah, that would
Uh,
be Chronos, right?
Kronos, Zeus.
That's what I've learned, and maybe I'm wrong, right? But
Mm,
from what I understand, the bearded white man up in the clouds that's pointing his finger down is
mm,
an expression of Chronos. The Saturn god, Lucifer. Sometimes they call him, right?
mm,
But I'm thinking that's simply an aspect of the greater divinity, because when we look at God, then we would have to see the polarity of God as well, right? Within the
mm,
God there would be darkness within that light, and that's how I interpret that white bearded fella. It's Santa Claus or whatever you want to call him, right?
mm.
That's kind of what I think he is.
Yeah, and it's interesting how our ideas of God have shaped our civilization, have shaped our culture.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have this idea of God as this bearded white dude sitting up in the clouds. It's shaped our, our
Our
colonial
perception, yeah.
um, perceptions of how the white man is basically, here to fulfill his manifest destiny.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then that's changed, from time to time. And now here we are in this paradigm, a new paradigm, where God is within everything, and there's no distinction, there's no duality between right and wrong, good and bad, because it's the principle of dynamic flow,
Mm-hmm.
of the yin yang, rather than um, good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, you can perceive things around us through the eyes of duality and separate them in terms of good and evil, which is important up to a certain stage. You know, we're learning about morality. We're learning about how we walk in
Wouldn't that
balance.
be like identifying and creating like a self identity if we observe it from that perspective of good and evil? And instead of creating that identity and saying, okay, well, I resonate with the good or I resonate with the evil, why
Mm,
not embrace both of those within yourself and have that duality and polarity, and then bypass that whole good and evil? Because good and evil is really your own perception, right? Like what's good to you could be bad to me. And, like for instance, let's use the example of cows in India. In India, you can't eat cows, you have to respect the cows. But when you come over here to North America, then they're viewed as burgers, right? But, in India, that's bad, but in North America, it's good. So the perception of good and evil
mm.
in my mind is that neither one exists, right?
And
Because
it's
it's
relative
really
to each
it's up
other.
to you, right? Like
Yeah.
Hitler, we see him as an evil man that killed 120 million people, right? But to him, he was doing a good thing, right? So
Mm,
the lines or the shade of good and evil, right, is not as clearly defined,
mm.
right, as we like to think it is.
Right. And evil, you know, in quotes, evil is also an evolutionary principle.
Mm-hmm.
So let's bring it really close to home. So, what's going on in the world right now? You know, we're looking at all these wars, we're looking at all the political craziness, we're
Mm-hmm.
looking at there's always, um, self and the other. So, if you're Democrat, then the Republican Party is the other,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to pin your own projection of blame onto the other.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in one country, then the other country is the enemy. Or you declare war on a principle, war on terror, war on,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the Cold War with the Soviets, now the new wars with Russia. You demonize someone, and then you can justify your own excesses um, against the other.
Mm-hmm.
All of this is part of what humanity has learned how to manipulate, how to control and dominate, how to repress, suppress. Um, all this is falling apart now. So what we're seeing now in this war with, the battlefield of
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine is that it's not as simple as that. Um, we go through the recent conflicts in Syria, in other places,
Libya.
Libya. Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? It's not as simple as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
The whole colonial mentality has been we are the good guys and you're the bad guys, and therefore we are justified in ruling you because you're not capable of ruling yourselves. We know better.
Does this come back to what we were saying earlier with the white race? Um, that perhaps that they're like a new race of people here on this planet that are come here to ascend and to learn, and then through the baby steps that's been taken over last 15-20,000 years is where we are today because of that, trying to understand. Because when we
Mm,
look at the the Aryan, the white race, right, they don't, they seem like they just kind of popped in, just not that long ago, because prior to
mm,
that most of the world was brown or black, right?
mm,
And then this current white race, right, from what I understand, showed up like 12,000 years ago, 15,000 years
mm,
ago, with the
mm,
mutation of the green eye, right? So I wonder if that has anything to do with these conflicts and such that we're talking about.
mm. Interesting. I haven't heard that. Yeah, but it's very. We're talking about different seedings
Mm-hmm.
of humanity from different parts of the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
So different races have been moving through this planet at different times, each bringing their own genetic
Their
seed
uniqueness, yeah.
uniqueness. So the white race, the brown race, the yellow race, the red race, the black race. That's our interpretation of this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's a prophecy of the rainbow races, the rainbow tribes, and I think this is what the seventh root race represents.
The
That this
indigo children coming in.
humanity, the new children,
Mm-hmm.
the rainbow children, whatever we call them, it's a it's a race of humanity that's much more connected with our divinity. So the five bodies are linked with each other in such a way that there's no more duality, no more sense of separation, no more fear. There's a sense of complete oneness with the universe, and therefore we become vehicles for that one spirit to create new evolutionary potentials.
Do you
Um,
think that Issa was like an indigo child, a star seed, or was he just like really, an inquisitive man that just wanted to like really learn as much as he could?
mm,
Or was it like, well, I would assume that he was on a mission as well because he's an incarnation of Buddha, right? I'm just trying to understand whether he himself was an indigo child and what we got coming into the world. If we can go back in history and see what Issa did, and I wonder if the children today would have that same possibility because he did say that he will come back. Right now, he
mhm,
didn't say that he would come back as an individual or as a person, but he just simply said, I'll be back. Right. So I wonder if that I'll be back is, through the aspects of, all these indigo children and star seeds that are
mhm,
coming into the planet to create this new seventh root race. And I wonder
mhm.
if that's what he meant by that I'm coming back.
Yeah. As a consciousness, so when you're talking about Christ consciousness in
Hmm.
the esoteric traditions of Christianity, that perhaps that's part of what he meant. This
Hmm.
is it's a consciousness that permeates of everything, all
Hmm.
of us. Um, and as we move closer and closer to Satyuga, this becomes more and more prevalent. So more and more of the newly incarnated children are manifesting this sense of unity consciousness without having to go through a lot of duality,
Hmm.
naturally experiencing the truth of all these things. They naturally come in with a sense of um, uh,
That knowing.
knowing and awareness that they see the world through new eyes,
Hmm.
not through the old laws of physics, but through quantum equations that bypass the matrix,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
therefore they're able to act within this matrix in a way that they're seen as the new X-Men or the wizards and
Superheroes and kind of what
heroes.
have you. Yeah.
It's really becoming more and more real.
Yeah. My granddaughter is a superhero. Her
Mm.
superpower is her beautiful little smile. She's
Uh,
so adorable. I love that little thing so much.
yeah, yeah.
Now let's going to close it off here pretty quick, but I'd like to hit this question I started earlier, and it's from Arclight, and I was wondering about this as well. He's saying, he or she, I'm not sure, but I'm wondering, are some people going into 4D now? What I'm, you know, I'll put my thought into this, into the 4D. I see it as that we live in a three-dimensional world, and within that three-dimensional world, if we take linear time of this dimension and add that within that three dimension, then it turns into the fourth dimension, because we would have to look at time as a dimension, a lower dimension, but nevertheless a dimension. Now, when we add that, we got the fourth dimension, right? And then now people that are saying that they're, going into 5D and 6D and kind of what have you, the way I'm interpreting that is that we already exist in the 4D, but the 5D would be the awareness of your consciousness, the awareness of yourself. And then once you become aware of yourself, then you can take consciousness as a dimension. I would assume consciousness is, you know, not a static dimension that, but it exists throughout all the other dimensions. And once you add that into the mix of this body avatar, then you would go into the fifth dimension because you've become aware of yourself, your surroundings, the universe, the earth around you, right? So that's kind of what I think 4D and
Mm.
5D is. But I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on 4D, because we hear this lots, right? People saying that they're ascending into 4D and 5D, sometimes 6D.
Right. So, okay. So back to what we were saying earlier. Um, we are multidimensional already. We think of ourselves as being located in one dimension alone. So, from that perspective, yes, maybe we identify with third dimensional time space,
Hmm.
and we are moving into a wider experience of who we are.
Hmm.
And then as we go into 5D, it's even wider. There's not necessarily a ladder, to fourth, fifth, sixth,
Hmm.
but it's more like each dimension you're experiencing more and more of who we are as um, a totality. So that alchemical principle, as above, so below, so within, so without. We're recognizing that all of this is inside us. We have the power of the universe moving through us, and there are scientific laws, higher scientific laws, through which we can actually begin to manifest these divine principles in ways that are extraordinary. And all the initiates in earlier traditions, in the Egyptian, the Tibetan, the Maya, the Inca, the Hindu, the initiatory path was about becoming multidimensional.
Hmm.
So it's not about moving from third to fourth to fifth as a linear structure, but experiencing all of that inside ourselves.
Hmm.
Uh,
I see. I see. So we have
Yeah,
like the
it
12.
becomes too linear.
Yeah.
Some systems talk about 7 dimensions or 13 dimensions or whatever, but it's
Hmm.
really when you get to the experience of it, the direct experience of this, you're beyond any structures or systems.
Yeah,
You're
I
just
see what you're saying.
as the one.
Because we're looking at it as like layers of cake, right? Let me bring myself on here. We're looking at it as like layers of cakes
Mm,
when we talk about dimensions, right? Like a ladder. And from what I'm understanding, all of those dimensions, right, from 0 to 12 to 13 to 50, whatever it is, all of those dimensions are within us.
mm,
And it's what we highlight or illuminate within ourselves is the dimension that's
right.
expanding within our own selves. Is that kind of what you mean by that?
Yes. Okay. So as an example, um, okay, take the tip of that finger. Just enter into the tip of your finger as deeply as you can. As you bring your consciousness into that space, it's no longer just physical. You start experiencing yourself dissolving into this spacious timelessness. You start entering into the quantum um, realm where you're going beyond the understanding of physical matter. You're entering into subatomic realities. You recognize that underneath physical matter, there's the pranamaya kosha. It's an ocean of energy. You dive into that ocean, you begin to experience everything inside everything else. You can experience infinite universes as you go into that one little cell. And then from that space, you experience the unity of God. And it can begin anywhere and include everything. So when you're getting into the experience of this, um, it doesn't matter what the structure is that you're using. You experience that alchemical principle, I am that.
Yeah,
And that.
yeah.
So when Moses says, I am that I am,
Mhm.
it was a combination of, in the Hindu tradition, I am that, which is recognizing that I am all of that. The entire universe is in me.
Mm-hmm.
And that I am is you start anywhere in the universe, and you experience yourself. So slightly different, but you know, they're
Principle
dual
is still the
aspects.
same.
Yeah. And so the most profound understanding, the most profound self revelation in the Abrahamic tradition was I am that I am.
Mm-hmm.
And someone who could really speak to the truth of that from experience was one who had experienced that basic unity. And this was part of the Egyptian tradition. So the Hebrews came from Egypt. So Moses was, in some traditions, Akhenaton.
Mm-hmm.
That is people out from Egypt into the promised land, which could have been Kashmir.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what he brought with him is the understanding through his own initiations, the understanding of who he was as the oneself. I am that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, it's not just a history, it's not just a story, it's an actual alchemical um, experience and
Now,
teaching.
I got this, thought running through my head, Kiara, and it is that when we look at the Abrahamic religions, right, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, why does it appear that they're worshiping a cube rather, than the teachings of Jesus or the teachings of Muslims or, whatever the case may be? Because when we look at Christianity and you take the cross,
Mm,
and geometrically you put that cross together, it turns into a cube. And then when you look at Judaism, they're wearing the Teflon on their third eye, which in itself is a black cube. And then we go to Islam, which in Mecca, it's the black cube. Right now,
mm,
when we look at all of that, and then we look at Saturnism, right? On the North Pole of Saturn, there's a natural hexagon, and a hexagon is a flattened out cube,
mm,
right? So, and then earlier on, we are talking about Chronos and things like that. So why does it appear? Because it seems that Jesus or Issa had like totally different teachings, right?
mm.
And then when we look at these Abrahamic religions, they seem to be more in worship of Cube and Lucifer and astronomy more so than the actual teaching of Jesus of like love your neighbor, love yourself, be kind, things like that. Why does it appear to you like that?
I think there's always been both. So
Mm-hmm.
there's the exoteric and the esoteric. So
Mm-hmm.
it starts with, Jesus spoke in parables for those who needed to hear that. And then the select few who were able to go deeper were taught directly into the deeper principles and um, initiations. So, for instance, the teachings of the five bodies and how they interpenetrate, and using that understanding for healing, for manifesting, for multiplying, and so on. Um, and I think that's true equally today. That's why it's so important for us now to move out of the periphery of religion into the heart of spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
So any of these traditions or teachings or religions could be a starting point, but then they lead into the center. And at the center, there's always only the one,
The heart.
the heart. But, to truly understand the heart, um, we first have to explore everything that is not of the heart, that is
Mm-hmm.
not one. And I think that's really what reincarnation, this whole journey is about. We're learning about unity by first having to experience separation. So it's like God playing hide and seek with itself. We lose ourselves and then we find ourselves, and yay, we found ourselves. Here we are. You are me. I am that.
I'm gonna count to 500 and then I'm coming.
Yeah,
It's really that type of game we're playing with ourselves, right?
exactly.
It's very fascinating and extremely profound. Like really, when you think about it, right? When I think of religions and study them and such, one thing that these all of the religions have in common is service to the whole, service to
Mm,
others rather than service to the self. Yeah, but somewhere along the line, we've lost, um, that thought pattern of serving others rather than serving yourself. Right.
mm,
So
mm,
that's one positive aspect of religions, I find. But you're absolutely correct that religion is a good starting point, right? But it shouldn't be the end point either, right?
mm,
You start there and then you go within and internally and discover yourself and discover, because the more you discover yourself, the more and the deeper understanding you have of what God is, of what consciousness is. Yeah, I don't really like to call it God myself. I call it more as consciousness, right?
mm,
The zero dimension. For me,
mm,
God would be a zero dimension, because from that zero dimension, everything is manifested from that nothing and is being expressed as matter, and that matter is being expressed as consciousness, and then that consciousness
mm.
can explore itself. So it's a truly fascinating subject to be discussing. So before we're past the hour and a half mark. Before we close this off, just one last question. We're going to be doing more talks on this, but when we look at Jesus, in artwork and such, we see uh, you know Jesus being expressed as an Aryan or Caucasian person. Now I'm wondering if Jesus was Indian, right? And it looked like you and I, and history has just kind of changed him into looking like the god of the people, right? Of the white race, so that it made a white god, and black people have a black god and black Jesus, and so on and so on. But I'm wondering if Jesus,
Mm.
in his ethnicity, was like Indian, and that's never been mentioned.
Yeah, so Indian is a very wide term.
Mhm, yeah, yeah,
Today, today it's much more homogenized. But
yeah.
back then, there were Greeks were settled in India. There were the Tocharians coming from the Caucasus Mountains were settled in India. The entire Kashmir region was Jewish, um, and um, from what I've been researching, he was white in the sense that he had
Mhm.
blonde hair, blue eyes, tall,
We see a
and
lot of that up in Kashmir too, right?
you still see people like that in
Hmm.
Kashmir. A lot of women with green eyes, um,
You see a
beautiful, really
Yeah,
beautiful people.
you see
They
a
feel
lot of
good,
Afghani people like that as well, where they have the red hair, blue eyes, sometimes gray eyes, that
right?
light skin.
Right. Yeah, you see people like that all over India.
Hmm.
In fact, the original caste system was known as it was based on color. Varna is color.
Hmm.
The Brahmins were, and it wasn't any kind of discrimination at that time. It was just a classification. So the Brahmins were actually the priestly class who were Jewish. Interesting, yeah.
Hmm.
So Abraham, Brahma,
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 yeah.
same roots, and they were a lot of them, the Kashmiri Jews, the Beni Israel, were from the Caucasus Mountains, the typical blue-eyed, blonde-haired Aryans. Today is becoming is part of the woke culture that you have to define them as brown or whatever
Hmm.
because that represents whatever it represents. But Buddha himself was fair-skinned
Hmm.
because he came from the same tribes. A lot of the Indian Brahmins are fair-skinned. That's how they recognized Issa. Many of the Tibetan people had similar roots. Many of the Egyptian people, um, so there was a lot of. We talked also about Issa going to North America and showing up all over, either in his light body or physically traveling to places. Quetzalcoatl in the Inca
Hmm.
uh, stories. He's depicted as a white man with beard and fair skin.
He's
So
also connected to the serpent, right?
right,
To the
that's
serpent king, and
Nagas.
yeah, and then that's what he learned about the Kundalini
Mm,
from
mm,
Mary
right,
in India. Yeah,
right.
so it's a lot of connections there, right?
Many different aspects to all of this, and we're just touching, the very surface. And we
Yeah,
can
yeah,
go
we
on
are.
this for hours, but it's
This is
fascinating.
Yeah, it is. It's an
We haven't begun
incredible
to
story.
actually talk about the story of Isa. We've only, spoken around that, but where he went, what he did, who he was with, that's another, huge story.
We're
Fascinating.
gonna have to touch on that again and continue this discussion because we need to raise awareness on this, especially when we're moving beyond this energetic distortion that we're in and going into
Mm,
that higher distortion. And with that higher distortion, we really need to examine our past and understand the stories that have been passed forward and
yeah,
realize them for what they actually are and not from what they're being presented, because we know being presented, Jesus being presented through the Bible, it's more of a control aspect to
yeah,
control that population. But majority of the Catholic world really has no idea that Jesus had traveled all over the world, literally. And their perception is just simply that he was in Jerusalem and then he was executed, and then that's it. And which is really, it's very sad
mm,
that
mm,
when you're practicing your religion, you should know the backstory of of what's happening and who these people and characters are and where they learned and acquired their information from,
yeah.
because you're trying to incorporate that within your own human experience, right? So
Yeah,
it's
I think it's all um, a matter of what people are ready for at any given
Mhm.
time. At
Yeah,
that
true
time,
that.
we weren't ready for this. It was a feudal system. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
those hierarchies and structures were important and necessary. Now we're coming out of that system and
Mm-hmm.
for, the rainbow tribes coming together in unity. And so now we are understanding the deeper truths within all religions, within all
Mm-hmm.
religions, and by direct personal experience. So even people who've never had any kind of background or training in any other religions, they're having the direct experience of oneness through their, own experiences with nature, with dreams, or just spontaneous Kundalini awakenings, or whatever it may be. Beauty, just coming into touch with beauty is enough to open the heart, to open up all the senses, to open up all the levels of the mind, so we can experience that divinity in totality.
I love this comment from Denny Ray, Michigan. Says it feels to me like we're all being revealed more and more in matter until one day we all see each other in spirit, and we'll be able to let go of the things we don't like in ourselves and others. Right? I love that comment.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
yeah, one of the best ones I've seen today.
Mm.
All the other comments were great too, guys. But Denny, that's really beautiful. I appreciate that. Terry says, "Yes, my mother always said the truths were hidden until we were ready. Many hidden in the Vatican vaults." Yeah, absolutely. Like even like 10 years ago, Kiara. Here, let me put you on full screen. Even like 10 years ago, we weren't really ready for this conversation, because this
Mm.
conversation
Mm.
has been going on for at least 45 years from from my perspective anyways, because as I stated in our earlier shows, that when I was a kid, like 7 8 years old, I would listen to my uncles and my dad and family and friends sitting around and talking about Jesus being in Pakistan, and to them it's a really big thing because they're Pakistani, and
Mm.
for Jesus to be in that country, it's a proud moment for them, right? And I used to hear that,
Mm.
and I didn't really understand it, and it's very recent, like in the last year or so, that I've really picked up the interest to want to talk about this and to try to have a deeper understanding. And like Terry's saying, and as you were saying, we weren't really ready for this
Right.
conversation. Even like 2 years ago, for that matter, right? It's just our consciousness is
Well, the
increased.
Da Vinci Code really opened up a lot.
Yeah, Dan Brown, I think it is, or is it Michael Feely?
Dan Brown. Mm.
Yeah, it's because Michael Feely is amazing. It's I call him the real Da Vinci Code because he
Mm.
really, really has
Yeah.
broken it down.
Yeah.
I should get you guys in a conversation together. I think it would be a very
Mm.
interesting
Yeah,
conversation.
let's do that. Let's do that.
Let's
Well,
see.
and
Let's hear about the book
yeah,
here. Yeah.
this is written by Barry Page and is based on yeah, who was it? The last person mentioned the Vatican vaults. Much
That,
of this information actually comes from the Vatican vaults. Yeah, Terry. So, this isn't just in the Eastern monasteries and um, hidden places. It's also what's buried inside the Vatican. You know, thousands of books spread across hundreds of, or maybe not hundreds, but kilometers of hidden libraries, which are now slowly coming into.
mhm.
Yeah, like Bill says, even now there's another level of truth, whatever truth is, just beyond the horizon of our consciousness, waiting for us to be ready. And then, soon as we're ready,
The truth
truth
will
might
be
show
revealed to you.
up.
I wonder if
We
that's what. What do you think? Man, I could just carry this on forever, but the when Jesus heals the blind, um, is that is that like something physical that he did to really to heal the blindness of a person, or is he talking more in like a coded language to where truth was revealed and that blindness was lifted, that ignorance was lifted? It's just so confusing. We're like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm certain that there's a allegorical quality to it also.
Hmm.
It was also very much a physical healing. I mean, this is something that's commonplace
Yeah,
uh,
the Essenes did it.
amongst the yogis in the Himalayas. And
Hmm.
when I was in Turkey, I learned a system of healing called Ilahi Nur, and I've experienced this in my
You
life.
have a book on that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So it's like once you're using these principles, um, none of us is outside of that. We can all experience these gifts and abilities. Remember with that priest who said this is the age of miracles has passed? No, not at all. You know, it's never been closer to us than today. And it's just time for us now to step into our own truth.
Yeah, exactly. And just understand it, right? Because once we understand it, then there's the first step to really realizing and understanding who and what we are and what our
Yeah.
own personal truth is, right? Because we're all here on a tailor-made journey that's
Mm.
tailored to each and single one of us. And my experience doesn't necessarily reflect your experience or your truth or my truth, but we just simply have to illuminate that aspect within ourselves to really fully understand what the truth is, because it's like you said, there's like many different layers of truth, and it's just very, very confusing. Is all I gotta say. But anyways, my brother, 144 is where we're at. 144444, great number. And guys, I'd like you to go and check out Kiara's website at kiarawindrider.net and check out his books. It's a brilliant man, brilliant teacher. Love the conversations with him. And if you guys want to see more of Kiara, then check out his YouTube channel. It's actually there's two of them. There's one Kiara Windrider as one word, and then there's Kiara space Windrider, and I believe this is the primary channel here, the with a single lettering, Kiara Windrider, and then of course the website. Check that out and show your support and love, because Kiara is an incredible teacher, as Kathy Mason was saying in the comments earlier. I don't know if you saw that, Kiara, but Kathy was in.
Yeah, I just saw it flash across the screen. What did she say?
Yeah, Kathy was in the room, and
So
I
good to see.
invited her into the studio if she wanted to come in and say hello, but she said she was
Mhm.
just got in from mowing the grass.
Ah,
Right, here's one. Hello, Kiara
yeah.
and Omar, and then
Mm.
Kathy again saying hi to Lizzie, and then oh, where did I go now? And then she was mentioning something about you staying with her when you visited the United
Good.
States and Colorado. Um, she says, I'm going to watch this more than once. Thank you,
Mm.
Kathy. Kathy's amazing. I love Kathy. She's like a
Yeah.
sister from another mother. I'd invited her into the studio because she wanted to just say hello, but she says she
Ah,
can't right now. She's been out mowing the lawn
mm.
and earthing. That's what that's what Kathy was doing. And here it is. She's like, I've known Kiara for more than 10 years. He stayed at my house before in Boulder, Colorado. He's a brilliant teacher. And indeed, he is, Kathy. And thank you very much for connecting Kiara and I, because I just met my next bestie.
Uh,
So, my brother, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. We have another conversation coming up, and we're going to have a lot more conversations coming up. But next week on Friday, July the 8th, I have with me Bibu Dev Misra, who is also in India, and he's a brilliant teacher himself. I've had the opportunity to work with Bibu a few times now. And he's going to be with us on Friday. So Kiara is going to be back with us. It's going to be Kiara, myself, and Bibu, and we'll continue this discussion about Issa in India and other aspects as well, because ancient India is just extremely, extremely fascinating. And also, we have working with a friend of mine from Philippines, and we are putting together a ancient India conference, and we're going to be featuring seven speakers or eight speakers on perhaps July 22nd, July 23rd, just waiting for David Frawley to give us the day, because he says it's not available on the 23rd. So we might jump it up to 22nd or on the 24th, depending on what other speakers, how their plan works out. But that's something in the making here right now. It's going to be a paid event, so I hope you guys check out the tickets and participate in this upcoming conference. And Rob Yox and I are also working towards another day event with Nikola Tesla and the free energy and Tesla energy. So that's going to be a very interesting one, because I have some huge interest in Nikola Tesla. And that's pretty much it for me, guys. Have some shows coming up. On Monday, I am with Rob Yox and Eric Hecker. And then I'm trying to put together a talk with Eric Hecker and Brad Olson, two people that have been to Antarctica. So we're going to try to have that conversation, because I've never really had a conversation with two people who've been to Antarctica, but I've had conversations with each one of them. So it should be very interesting, because Antarctica is crazy as fuck. It's just a lot of crazy things going on down there. So, Kiara, before I let you go, my brother, any words of wisdom, any final words for our audience before we call it a day and plan on our next meeting?
yeah, I'm just delighted to be part of this, you know, round table with all of our listeners. And I think the most important thing for all of us is to simply know that what we are experiencing in this time is a very pivotal awakening moment. And the illusion of what seems to be, is a very small part of what really is. And so, holding and focusing on what we really are and our evolutionary destiny as a species, as a planet, as a universe, it's incredibly beautiful and way beyond anything we can even imagine at this time. But it's what we're here for, and such a gift, such a privilege to be here on this earth at this time in history.
It
So,
sure
and
is.
thank you, Omar, for holding this space for all of us. It's beautiful what you do, brother.
Thank you, brother. And it wouldn't be possible without our audience and the speaker as well. It's the audience that makes it happen, right? If nobody was watching, then there would really be no point in streaming. So I appreciate the audience, a ton. I appreciate you as well, the speaker, right? But this is about raising awareness, self-awareness, and collective awareness. And I appreciate you, and I appreciate everyone in the audience, because usually there's a really good conversation happening in the audience, and people are sharing links and their own ideas and experiences, and I really feed off of that, and it just really energizes me that people are resonating with the content that we're streaming. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate you guys. And once again, this broadcast was brought to you guys by Ancient Healings Conference, which is happening on July 8th, 9th, and 10th. This will be a virtual live stream as well as in person in Florida. So if you guys are in the Florida area and you guys want to go and check out this day conference, it's actually over the weekend. So please do so. And if you're interested in seeing the virtual speakers coming in from Australia, Canada, Europe, there's the whole Zoom room that's being set up, and I hope to see you guys there. I will be presenting on July the 9th, I believe, and I'll be talking about sound healing and practical use of sound, on how we can use it on a daily basis. As I was saying early in the beginning of this broadcast, that not everyone has instruments, but to realize that we are an instrument ourselves, and we can create that magical sound vibration of 528 from within ourselves, so that we can begin to heal our body avatars and heal those around us as well. Because when you do the inner work and healing on yourself, you're actually doing a healing right across the plane on everyone else as well. So, guys, thank you. I love you all. And please visit Kiara's website at kiarawindrider.net, and subscribe to Kiara's YouTube channel as well. It's under Kiara Windrider, and the link is in the comments as well in the description of this video. So until next time, guys, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your support. I appreciate you all. My name is Omar. I'm coming at you guys from West Coast, British Columbia, Canada, with my brother, with my guest, Kiara Windrider, coming at you guys from mother country of India. Love you all, and we will see you in just a bit. Bye for now.